Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome in tonight, or today, or this morning, this evening, whatever, and wherever you are, however you may be listening to us, watching us today. Let me tell you something. You know, I've been sounding like a broken record the past few weeks, because it seems like every time I go on here after a great college football Saturday, I say these words: another great week in college football. Another great Saturday. Well, it's no mistake. It seems like every week is more of the same. And that's a wonderful thing. That is a beautiful thing. There's no doubt about that. I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining at all. You know, we here a few weeks back before the season, we ping-ponged this little topic around here, and we asked the question, would you rather have whatever college football is going to be in the next, let's just say, 5 years? I think we said maybe 2027. Or would you rather have college football as it was in 2007? Now, we don't know what the future is going to hold, obviously. We don't know what college sports in general, we don't know what it's going to look like here in a few years. But would you rather take whatever that's going to be and just be stuck with that? Or would you rather have 2007? And I think a lot of us agree that the 2007 is what we would prefer to have. And we went a little bit further. Would you take right now? Or would you take 2013, the last year of the BCS? And we were kind of torn on that. Some of us preferred how it is now. Some of us preferred the pre-playoff college football world. The atmosphere was different in that day and time. But you know, the point that I'm getting at here is, regardless of what the atmosphere, what the college football world is, how it operates, NIL or not, playoff or not, transfer portal, free transfer, whatever it may be, we still have high level football. And look, you can't compare it to the NFL. Nobody does. Nobody realistically compares college football to the NFL. But I tell you what, there are many things that cause us, like you, the viewers here, everybody out there in streaming land, out in this world, at the sound of my voice, we know that college football and its pageantry and its tradition, the love for the game, the love for each other, is what's the greatest thing, what makes it unique. If you look like we did Saturday at that Ole Miss and LSU game, which we'll talk about here in a little while, and you see that game, the crowd is into it. It's a night game. The atmosphere is incredible in Oxford. They go right down to the wire. They win the game. The fans storm the field, just like the whiteout at Penn State. The atmosphere up there at Neyland Stadium when Tennessee comes out and they run through the tee, whether that's in Death Valley down in LSU. I mean, it's just, there's so many things about college football that are so beautiful. And regardless of the atmosphere, regardless of these other external things that are coming into the sport, it's still the beautiful game that it is. And this week was no exception. This week was nothing more, nothing less. It was just exactly how it has been, and that's exactly how we love it here, folks. We'll get into the SEC slate. We'll quickly run through your SEC results. I'll discuss a few out-of-conference matchups. We'll talk about some of these games, and we'll look forward to next week, and we won't get into next week's. That's for later in this week. Look, we're still looking backwards. We're still looking in the rearview mirror. We have plenty of time to look ahead to next Saturday. There's many more days in this week as I'm recording this. But hey, let's not waste any time, shall we? Yeah, we say this is a beautiful game. It's a beautiful time to be a fan. And even in a down year in the SEC, it's still a great time when you get there and you sit in your man cave, or you sit in your living room, or you go to the stadium to watch one of these games. You're going to get a great matchup. You're going to have good SEC play regardless, because this is the greatest conference in the world. And those of you that may be watching, may be listening, that disagree with that, hey, that's fine. Look, we take, here at Right Along Sports, we accept any and all opinions. If you love the Big Ten, if you think the SEC sucks, that's perfectly fine. If you think the ACC is the kingdom, that's perfectly fine. If you think the Pac-12, as minuscule as it is right now, if you're let's say an Oregon State fan or a Washington State fan, and you think, hey, we got this, boys, we're going to hold this whole thing up, we're going to keep it all together, hey, I accept any and all enthusiasm and any opinion that you have. Look, we're not here to stomp on anybody. We're not here to try to pour water on the fire of your fandom. But right here, as we take a look at this SEC slate here, all SEC matchups, that's all we can ask for, right? And you folks that may have heard this term, for those of you that haven't, I like to say we're here in the meat and potatoes of the season. You know, you get to the first couple weeks of the year, and there's really not a lot going on. It's a lot of you may have an SEC, one stray SEC versus SEC game here, but it's usually non-conference games. It's not really exciting. But then when you get to, say, last week, we were really into it. We really reached the meat and potatoes, and it's more the same this week. Let's start from the top right here. You had number 22 Florida versus Kentucky. Kentucky undefeated. They beat Florida pretty handedly, 33-14. Florida managed to score a couple touchdowns, but Kentucky, you may ask, why aren't they up until this point of this game right here? These rankings are not current. These were at the time that these games are played. So I want to put that context out there. But you wonder, how's Kentucky not ranked? Well, they're very tough. I think they're pretty big contenders in the East. Maybe the number one contender outside of Georgia. And I know you may be thinking, oh, what about Tennessee? Well, we'll talk about them in a minute. Kentucky hasn't had a incredibly tough schedule up until this point. Now, that's not like downplaying what they are and what they're going to be able to do this year. That's just saying, they have a lot of tests up ahead that will really show who they are. Look, they played Ball State, Eastern Kentucky, Akron, and Vanderbilt before playing this game at Florida. So it's understandable that they wouldn't have them ranked yet, because we don't know what they are. Their test will come at Georgia this Saturday. Hey, it has the makings of being a great game. And look, and if it's not, I'll come on here next week and say, hey, I was wrong. It was a terrible game. Georgia blew them out. But Kentucky faces this game, and after that they play Missouri. And Missouri is a whole nother beast, another undefeated team that has a chance. We don't know what they are yet. But Kentucky has to play Georgia. They have to play Missouri, Tennessee, Mississippi State, Alabama, South Carolina. They have a tough road ahead. And there's no doubt they're going to earn, if they've managed to compete with Georgia for that Eastern Division title, it's going to be a dogfight. And look, credit to them if they make it to that point. But right here, they went all over this Florida team, and the score, obviously not a blowout, but if you watch that game, Kentucky just that they handled they handled Florida. Now, I'll give them credit. Graham Mertz didn't have that bad of a game. He was 25 of 30, 244 yards, 2 touchdowns. He threw a pick in that game. Not terrible. Now, Devin Leary for Kentucky, he was 9 for 19, 69 yards and a touchdown, and that's not great by any means. What Kentucky has at quarterback, I'm not really sure, what their depth consists of, but their star is right there at running back. Ray Davis had a great game. He carried the rock 26 times, 280 yards, 3 touchdowns. They ran all over this Florida team. I mean, just ran all over them. and it showed. If you watch this game, it seems like every other play they were getting a lot of yards. And I'd like to know what the average. Okay, right here, Ray Davis's average was 10.8 yards per carry. Now he carried the ball, like I said, 26 times, but 280 yards. That's incredible. They just really put that Florida defense to shame. And for Florida, they're 3-2. They're actually not as bad as we thought they would be at this point. Now they obviously they started the year out. They had that loss versus Utah. It's an ugly loss to start the season. And then they got a win against McNeese. And, impressive because they beat Tennessee in the Swamp, and I thought Tennessee could do it. We thought Tennessee might be able to go down to the Swamp and get a victory, but they couldn't. Florida beat them 29-16, and then obviously they had a win over Charlotte before losing this week to Kentucky. Now for Florida, they may have an easy road here. They may have a little bit of breathing room. They play Vanderbilt, but then they play South Carolina. That's going to be a 2:30 CBS game, and I'm just not sure. South Carolina, we'll talk about them here in just a moment in their battle against Tennessee. But Spencer Rattler, Florida ran all over Kentucky, or Kentucky ran all over Florida, excuse me. Will Spencer Rattler throw the ball and run, for that matter, all over Florida? That's yet to be determined if Florida can't figure something out. But that's that game. And as we move on to the next one here, Texas A&M and Arkansas, 2 unranked SEC teams. Texas A&M gets the victory 34-22 over the Razorbacks. Now, Arkansas is they're kind of hurting. They got KJ Jefferson, and I say this week after week, and again, I sound like a broken record here, but people held him to a very high standard. Preseason quarterback rankings had him at one of the top in the SEC. We didn't think he was that great. He's obviously experienced, and you would hope that he would be better than he has been in previous years. But they really haven't been able to get it together, and I know part of that is for KJ, who does he have to throw to? Like literally, who is out there? That's a problem for him. And I don't know what they're doing in Arkansas, but it's not working. It's not working out well for them. And if I'm not mistaken, it was said that, hey, they're almost there. I heard that. And I'll get Arkansas's schedule to tell you here what they've done. No. Excuse me. Well, we'll talk about Texas A&M first, because I always have a lot to say about Texas A&M. And look, I don't mean to pick on Jimbo, but look, he's just so easy. He's just so darn easy to pick on. I'm sorry. Okay? Can you guys ever forgive me for that? Look, Texas A&M is, hey, they're a contender in the West. The West is absolutely wide open, and there is no doubt about that. Texas A&M 4-1. They're obviously undefeated in the SEC. They took that L versus Miami, which was kind of, I don't know if that was expected or unexpected, because the ACC is looking pretty good right now. Honestly, they are. I mean, there's these other conferences are really stepping it up this year. But A&M wins against New Mexico. They obviously lost against Miami. They got an obvious win against Louisiana Monroe. Beat Auburn, an Auburn that went toe-to-toe with the number one team in the country, the Georgia Bulldogs, and give them some fits and really challenged them on Saturday. A&M beat that Auburn team 27-10 before beating Arkansas. Right there you see 34-22. Now, what they have ahead is Alabama, 2:30 CBS. I just don't know. Like, is Texas A&M going to be the team? Now, obviously, Texas were the ones to rattle Alabama early. But is Texas A&M going to be the other team? Ole Miss couldn't do it. Mississippi State couldn't do it. Is it going to be Texas A&M? Now, let's see let's see some stats. Let's take a look right here. All right. Now, for Texas A&M, Max Johnson in this game was 17-28, 210 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he threw 1 interception. Now, KJ Jefferson on the other side was 9 of 17, 132 yards, 1 touchdown, and he threw a pick as well. Now, I keep reiterating the thing about Arkansas and their receiving core. I just don't think they're very good. I really, honestly, name a Arkansas wide receiver. Name one. You can't. Nobody can. And I don't know where their strengths are, honestly. I don't know where their strengths are. I don't know if they should be a rushing team, if they should be a passing team. Honestly, not much is working. Now for Texas A&M, they spread the ball around. Now they've had some issues. They've had some turnovers. They're not a perfect team by any means, but it's about time that they show that all those recruits, all that recruiting that Jimbo Fisher's done is actually doing something. And that the coaching is actually working, that Jimbo is finally handed over the offensive coordinator duties to somebody else. Goodness, I hope so. Now, he won't admit that it's all his fault, that he was the one bringing the team down. He won't admit that. Like Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri did. He basically said at ACC Media Days, hey, I was holding the team down, and I handed the play calling duties over to our new offensive coordinator. That's the difference. That's the difference in the two guys right there. But let's move on. I mentioned Auburn a minute ago. They played Georgia. Number one, the defending national champions, the Georgia Bulldogs. This game was in Auburn, Alabama. Georgia manages to win. They get the victory 27-20 over the Auburn Tigers. Now, slow start in this game. Pretty even early. And was it a surprise? I don't know. Depends on how you look at it. It's hard to think that Georgia, with the the power that they've had could struggle like they have so far. Now, granted, they've won these games. Until they lose, like, we shouldn't be worried, especially if you're a Georgia fan. Now, I know, like, a lot of Georgia fans that I've spoke to are kind of discouraged. They're discouraged because, you know, you're 5-0, you're 2-0 in conference play, you're still number one in the country, and you've got a bright future ahead of you. But just like with Alabama, you have a reason to be concerned. But I think, like, until you lose a game, until you meet your kryptonite, I don't think there's anything to worry about, honestly. And that's just my opinion. So in this game here, Carson Beck for Georgia, he was 23 of 33, 313 yards. That's a 9.5 average yards per attempt. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He had a 91.4 quarterback rating. Now for Auburn, Peyton Thorne, he was 10 of 19, 82 yards, 4.3 average. He had 1 pick. Now, where where Auburn's touchdowns came was on the ground. Jarquez Hunter and Robbie Ashford. They both combined to get the 2 touchdowns for Auburn. Obviously, they had 2 field goals on top of that. Whereas for Georgia, Dejon Edwards had 2 touchdowns. Brock Bowers, the incredible tight end, just a great all-around football player, had the 1 touchdown. His stats so far this year, he's had 30 receptions, 413 yards, and 3 touchdowns. 13.5 yards, or 13.8 yard average per reception. He's a junior. He's 6'4", 240, and this kid is special. I mean, he is. He's special, and he's going places. Like, his future is very bright, and especially in a football world where the tight end is basically, in most offenses, another wide receiver. But this kid right here, he can do it all, and he has a bright future in the NFL. No doubt about that. But back to this game, the breakdown by the quarter. Auburn jumped out to a 10-0 lead in the first quarter. That's how the first quarter ended. But Georgia answered with 10 of their own points in the second quarter. They went to halftime 10-10. And then they fought again in the third quarter, and they made it 17-17. This was a great game, back and forth. This is the kind of game where, you know, if you're a fan of either of these teams, you know it's a good game to watch, but it's like you don't have any fingernails left by the end of it. There was actually several games this Saturday that were like that, but this one, because it's so low scoring, maybe. But Georgia came back, and they pulled away, and they got 10 points in the fourth quarter, and they win by a touchdown. Look, you know, we said this about Alabama last year. Alabama were a few bad plays away from losing more games than they did, like losing several games. But Nick Saban finds a way. He did. And he won all those games. He always finds a way. Hey, and look, if you win the game, you win the game. It doesn't matter if you win by 1 point or 100 points. That is a win. It's a win column. It goes in the win column. And that's just how it is. That's just the facts. And like I said, for Georgia, let's see what they have up ahead. Well, let me tell you who they played. They played UT Martin Ball State. They played South Carolina, beat them 24-14, played UAB, and then right here, they beat Auburn 27-20. Now, they play number 20 Kentucky next week, or this Saturday, I should say, October 7th. I should start putting the date to these for those of you in the future that may be looking back and watching this or listening to this. They play Vanderbilt, Florida, Missouri. They play Ole Miss November 11th, Tennessee November 18th, and Georgia Tech November 25th. So it's going to be, I'm telling you right now, it's a shootout between them and Kentucky. Unless Tennessee shows me more. Now, Tennessee isn't a bad team, but I want to see here in the next couple weeks what Kentucky can do. And if Kentucky can show me, and if Tennessee can show me in the next 2 weeks, I'll know. Maybe this week. But right now I have Kentucky in a slight lead over Tennessee for the competition. Obviously, Georgia's number 1, but tied for second is Tennessee and Kentucky, in my opinion, for the East. Let's move on. You had number 23, Missouri, facing Vanderbilt. Missouri wins 38-21. Missouri, another interesting team here. Undefeated. Obviously, a contender in the East at this point, too. You know, I didn't mean to leave them out, but I just don't know. They've beat Vanderbilt. They beat Memphis. They beat Kansas State. They beat Middle Tennessee State. And South Dakota. No. Yes. Excuse me. South Dakota, yes. See, this confused me. Yes, they played that game a little early. So, they had the walk-off win against Kansas State, as we all know. The 62-yard field goal, was it? We really don't know what they are. We really don't know what Missouri is. That's why I hesitate to really put them up like higher than, or say tied for second with Tennessee and Kentucky. Now, Brady Cook, the quarterback from Missouri, he's so far this year has went 105 of 141, 1,468 yards, 11 touchdowns. He hasn't thrown any interceptions. He's not a bad quarterback. Pretty average among other quarterbacks in the SEC, I believe. Comparing him to Carson Beck, let's say. Carson Beck is 116 and 161, 1,497 yards, 7 touchdowns, 2 picks. That'd be interesting to see what, and again for them too. We'll see. Literally, in a week or two, I'll know. We'll all know what the contender is. What is Georgia's competition in the East? And again, if Georgia keeps running the table and doing what Georgia's been doing, hey, they don't have to worry about any of this. Oh boy, we move on right here to the next game. Number 13 LSU, number 20 Ole Miss. Ole Miss gets a late touchdown in a shootout, and they stop LSU. They prevent them from getting the touchdown, the walk-off touchdown. Well, it wouldn't be a walk-off touchdown. They'd have to kick the extra point. But 6-point game. LSU scores 49. But Ole Miss wins 55-49 in that game. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a moment. Well, let's just point out some things here. Let's go ahead and look at some stats of that game, shall we? Well, I'll wait till later. If we can look at it right now. All right. So, in this game, Ole Miss jumped up 21 points. They scored 21 in the first quarter. They started off hot. They got up ahead 2 touchdowns to LSU's 1. Then LSU scored 21. See, this seems to be a theme here. Because that was the thing in the Auburn game. Auburn scored 10 points in the first quarter. Georgia scored 10 in the second. Well, right here, Ole Miss scores 21 in the first. LSU answers with 21. And basically, hey, it goes from there. Ole Miss scores 3 in the third, but 21 again in the fourth. And again, I don't want to say too much right now. Stay tuned. We'll get the rest of the review of that game here in a moment. But let's just look at some quick stats. Jaden Daniels, excuse me. I think seems like last night, or Saturday night, I should say, seems like Jalen Daniels was said a couple times. Just a minor little mistake there. I've heard others make that same mistake. Hey, look, we're all human, right? Jaden Daniels, 27 of 36, 414 yards, 4 touchdowns, 11.5 average yards per attempt. On the other side, Jackson Dart was 26 of 39, 389 yards, 4 touchdowns, 10 yards average per attempt. They didn't throw a pick. Neither of them threw a pick. Obviously, Jaden Daniels got walloped early in the game in the first quarter and coughed up the football. We all seen that highlight on ESPN and on our social medias and all that multiple times. Well, that was an interesting hit too, because it wasn't like it was all strength. It was like a shove, like a very powerful shove. Like, that's weight room stuff right there. Like that, their strength and conditioning coach down there at Ole Miss is doing something right. If these guys can do that, and look, they should be strong. They're Division I, SEC caliber athletes. They should be that strong. But on the rushing side, we'll start with LSU. Logan Diggs had 19 carries, 101 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jaden Daniels had 15 carries of his own, 99 yards, and 1 touchdown. And for Ole Miss, you had a trio. Quinshon Judkins is able. He was finally able to get some rhythm going in the running game. That was refreshing to see. He had 33 carries, 177 yards, 5.4 average yards per carry. He had 1 touchdown. His longest run was 37 yards. And here's another guy right here, Ulysses Bentley. And we've got to do some more talking about Ulysses Bentley the fourth. He's quick. He's fast. He's talented. He carried the ball 9 times for 90 yards. That's a 10 yards per carry average, 1 touchdown. His longest was 43 yards. He's a star, man. And Jackson Dart had 7 carries of his own for 50 yards, 7.1 yards average per attempt, 1 touchdown, 27 yards was his longest one. Now, I don't know if that's the one where he completely hurtled over the dude or not, but I'm assuming that is that play. For receiving, Brian Thomas Jr. for LSU, 8 receptions, 124 yards, 15.5 yards per catch, 3 touchdowns. His longest was 34 yards. Malik Neighbors, 8 receptions, 102 yards, 12.8 yards per reception, I should say. 0 touchdowns. Kyron Lacey had the other touchdown. He owned 2 receptions, 51 yards, 25.5 average yards per catch. His longest was 29. So 4 touchdowns in the air, 3 touchdowns on the ground. Obviously, there was the lost fumble, but when we talk about this here more in a minute, we'll talk about this defense. But we're just running through the stats real quick. For Ole Miss receiving-wise, a slew of players here, including Quinshon Judkins and Ulysses Bentley. But Trey Harris on 8 receptions, 153 yards, 19.1 average. He had a touchdown. His longest was 56. Jordan Watkins, 5 receptions, 103 yards, 20.6 average, and 1 touchdown for him as well. His longest was 63. Dayton Wade, 7 receptions, 64 yards, 9.1 average, 1 touchdown, 15 yards is his longest. Now, Quinshon Judkins had the other receiving touchdown. I believe that was the first touchdown of the game for 4 yards. Obviously, that was his only reception of the game, so a 4-yard average. And Trey Washington recovered the fumble from Jaden Daniels in that game. We'll talk a little bit about the rest of this here in a moment, but that's just kind of the breakdown there. We'll look ahead of what LSU and what Ole Miss can do and what their future looks like in the SEC West. But for now, let's move on. South Carolina and Tennessee. South Carolina, unranked South Carolina, and 21st ranked Tennessee. Tennessee wins 41-20. Now, like I said, I'm not really sure about Tennessee yet. They're kind of on my, I'm putting him over in this other column for now. I just really don't know what they are. You know, we kind of praised Joe Milton. We thought he was a top 5, top 3 quarterback in the SEC. He was 21 of 32 in this game, 239 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, 45.3 quarterback rating, Now on the other side, Spencer Rattler, 24 of 35, 169 yards, 4.8 average. He didn't throw a touchdown, had 1 interception. But, however, Spencer Rattler did have 1 touchdown on the ground. He carried the ball 11 times. Now, whether that's including sacks or whatever, I know sometimes these statistics are kind of weird. A quarterback may have 70 rushing attempts, but they literally only ran just a few times. They consider sacks as rushing attempts. Some sources do. It's very weird. But yeah, 19 yards total, 11 touchdowns. That's the other thing. It's the yardage is considered in the rushing for a quarterback. That's what's so weird. That's right. So you could have a quarterback that rushes for 100 yards, but if he got sacked, say 2 times in a game, 8 yards each, that would make it only 86 yards rushing. And it's just a weird thing to me because, it's different if it just doesn't make sense. That just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, why would you group a sack? You get sacked. Why would that be part of any part of your rushing stats? I don't get that. But for Tennessee, rushing wise, they had Jalen Wright, 16 carries, 123 yards, 1 touchdown. Jabari Small, 11 carries, 56 yards, 1 touchdown. Dylan Sampson, 9 carries, 49 yards, 1 touchdown. Receiving, Jacob Warren, 3 receptions, 26 yards, and he had the lone receiving touchdown. In this game, Tennessee jumped up. They had 14 in the first quarter and 10 in the second. They were leading 24-10 at halftime, and then South Carolina came out, scored 7 more to make it 17-24. But Tennessee made it 31-24 there soon after. Scored 10 more points in the fourth, held South Carolina to 3, and that's how you got to your final of 43-20. Now, I had considered South Carolina maybe part of that, put them over here in the column versus Tennessee, Them and Tennessee could probably maybe battle out for 3rd place in the East, tied for 3rd in the East, I should say. But, they're just not, they're pretty much out of that. Spencer Rattler's special. I think he's a great quarterback, and I don't know. Early in the year, you could have said that he may have been the best quarterback in the SEC at that point. Obviously, now I think the Jaden Daniels, Jackson Dart, Insert one of many others that you could put in the third place spot, but he's not bad. They just can't get, South Carolina can't get it together. They can't manage to string together whatever they have to do to get wins over these teams, because you got to beat a Tennessee. And for Tennessee, they're 4-1, 1-1 in conference play. Obviously, they lost in the swamp to Florida. They haven't really played anybody. They have a test against Texas A&M before playing Alabama. Now, that Alabama game, like I've said, Tennessee, maybe it's versus Texas A&M. That may be where they make their statement. But we'll see if we just need to throw Tennessee completely out the window, or if we need to really consider them as the contender versus Georgia. You know, they played Georgia towards the end of the year. At that point, have they exceeded Kentucky? There's a head-to-head with Kentucky. This is all going to sort itself out, folks. Look, we just, as college football fans, as people that love to watch college football, love to get all nerdy with these stats and all these things and X's and O's, and come on here in front of a microphone, in front of some cameras, and talk about this stuff. Look, that's all we can do. We're filling time. We're talking. But hey, if there wasn't anything to talk about, a lot of people wouldn't have jobs. And you people, like, such as myself, I wouldn't have anything to listen to when I'm trying to work. So there's beauty in the unknown. Because really, we don't know what's going to happen. That's just like all week. You watch ESPN, you watch all these YouTube videos of these people, whether it's myself, Zach Ainsworth, Josh Pate, or if it's Paul Feinbaum, if it's any of those shows on ESPN, or insert your favorite. Colin Cowherd, he's kind of out of touch, I think. He's just, he's the hot take king, right? He likes drawing controversy, but anyway. Insert your favorite sports or college football talking head. Look, you hear them talk all week. And you sit here and you watch videos and you're wondering all this and that. You lay in bed at night and you have that phone right there. You have that device. Maybe it's an iPad. And you're sitting there and you're watching and you're like, what's so-and-so going to say? You know, I've watched 17 videos on, you know, what my team's going to do this week. Or any information, any opinion that I can find. And we watch that all week, but really, what do we know? Until they play the games, what do we know? For Tennessee, until they play some tough teams like Texas A&M and Alabama, what do we know? Now you may say, oh, Brandon, they got beat by Florida. Florida's terrible. It's hard to win in the swamp. We'll see if that game was an outlier. We'll see. Like I said, it's all going to sort itself out. It's going to sort itself out, folks. And for South Carolina, their hopes of the East is done. I mean, and who does South Carolina have? What's their schedule look like upcoming? You know, they've got a loss against North Carolina. Not too optimistic of a start to the year. They get beat by Georgia. Look, they already got that behind them. 24-14. It wasn't a terrible loss. 10 points to the defending two-time national champions, like back-to-back. They beat Mississippi State by 7 points. Now, Mississippi State, they've got a lot of issues that we'll talk about here in a minute, but hey, they're figuring it out. At least I think they are. Look, they got beat by Alabama. So is everybody else except Texas. But South Carolina has a tough. I mean, they've got to play Missouri, Florida, Missouri, Texas A&M, Kentucky, and Clemson. We'll just see. Can they make chicken salad? That's all I'm going to say. We move on right here. Last game on the list for your SEC slate, your SEC results. Alabama, number 12 Alabama, goes to Starkville to they kick this game off at 8 p.m. local time in Starkville. That's insane. But look, Alabama started slow again. But they pulled away when they needed to, and they got the victory. You know, Alabama is they're cutting it close. Now I understand like the pessimism by some Alabama fans, and I've talked to some because I know several, because there's a lot around. If you've never met an Alabama fan, if you've never seen one in the wild, which those of you that may be outside the lines of the Southeast, and even then, I'm sure there's Alabama fans all around the country and the world, but if you're outside this little outline of the Southeast that we live in here, if you've never met an Alabama fan, you know that they're always optimistic, they're always, they hold themselves really high, distinguished. They're held to such, and they hold this program to such a high standard that if Alabama has a loss, or if Alabama looks weak, if Alabama just doesn't completely go in there and absolutely beat up and dominate somebody, then the whole fan base they get all worried. Oh man, what's going on here? What's happening? Is Nick Saban? Is the dynasty over? People overreact. But there's that old used up, a metaphor, phrase, whatever it may be, glass half full, glass half empty. All right, are you a glass half full or are you glass half empty when referring to this Alabama team? Because I've spoken to a lot of Alabama fans that are glass half empty. Oh, there's no hope. We're going to go down. We're going to crash and burn. We're going to lose, we're going to lose games this year. A lot of people, they thought Ole Miss was going to be the one to take down Alabama. That didn't happen. But Alabama's got a tough road. Hey, there's no doubt about that. Now let's take a look at this game right here. Let's look at some stats. This Mississippi State game here. Now we've talked about Mississippi State and their struggles offensively. And it's really, I like to say, and I was talking to a guy today about this, it's a shock to the system to go from what they were doing on offense to completely and I don't want to say do a 180, but like you're basically doing a 180. The air raid, something that Mike Leach with another guy back in the 80s created, and that was it. That was what he was going to run. He had an offensive line that was basically recruited for their pass blocking abilities. A quarterback that had played in an air raid system in high school, and that's all he knows, literally all he knows. And look, for you to just go and immediately change that and expect it to work, it's kind of naive. Now, I give Zach Arnett credit. Now, he was dropped into this position. And look, I give him credit. Like, I honestly do. And if he's able to get some wins this year, they've won 2 games. They're 2-3. They're 0-3 in conference play after this game. past Saturday. If he can manage to become bowl eligible, it's going to be a tough road ahead for them. But if they can manage to become bowl eligible, that's going to be a huge boost for them. They're trying to run the ball, and that's something that they haven't done in years. Even when they had a great running back, Mike Leach was just not going to run the ball, very rarely. So then you saw Mississippi State try to change it up a little bit. All right. Hey, let's run the ball. That's not going to work. What should we do? Oh, I know. Let's stop trying to do this balanced offense, or maybe like I would even dare to say a run first, or not an even 50-50 balance split. I would say that they were probably focused on the run a lot more, and their pass game was not that great. It was almost non-existent. They couldn't get anything going. Will Rogers couldn't get anything going, couldn't get any rhythm. The offensive line was not doing that great. And versus the LSU game, it was ugly. He did not have time to sit back in the pocket and pass. Let's look at some stats here in this game, and we'll break it down. No, but what I was saying a moment ago though was they went back and said, "All right, look, we're going to pass some more. We're going to balance this out. We're not going to try to do too much more than we've done before. We're going to kind of dial it back a little bit, in other words." But still in this game, Will Rogers, 15 of 27, 107 yards, 1 touchdown. He threw 3 picks. There's been a lot of turnovers this year, and I really can't put my finger on it. Now, he's had 4 interceptions. He's thrown just a little over 1,000 yards, 1,086 yards this year, 7 touchdowns. And look, this kid, Will Rogers, is still breaking records. He's going to continue to do that if he racks up a lot of yards this year. And he should be credited for that. You shouldn't put an asterisk beside it just because he was in a 98%, 99% passing offense. Like, you shouldn't take away those honors that he broke those records just because he threw the ball 50, 60 times a game. But on the other side, Jalen Milroe, really, honestly, you can tell just by looking at these stats what Nick Saban, what his idea was, what his plan was in this game. It was basically just we're going to get through this week. No need for Jalen Milroe to really do anything crazy. He was 10 to 12, 164 yards, no touchdowns or interceptions. It was all rushing. Obviously, there was a defensive touchdown. An interception returned, 28 yards for a touchdown in the game. Pick 6 is just I can't imagine being a quarterback, dropping back to pass, throwing the ball, and then seeing the other team pick the ball off, but watching them run the exact opposite direction and them score the touchdown. That must be a terrible feeling. Let me know if any of you are quarterbacks or have ever been a quarterback in your life, and tell me what that's like. Because I can only imagine. But Jalen Milroe, he rushed 11 times, 69 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Jace McClellan 15 times for 1 touchdown. And basically, they just rode on through this game. They started a little slow. I mean, they scored 14 points in the first quarter, but they just kept scoring. 17 points in the second, and at that point, they had a pretty comfortable lead. What is that? 31-point lead. It's 31-10 going into halftime. I think they were pretty confident with where they were, so they kind of just rode it out. They scored 3 in the third and 6 in the fourth. State scored their 7th to make it 17 in the third quarter and just couldn't get anything done at the end of the game. And that's unfortunate. And, I heard that the fans were still pretty upbeat, even late in the game. And, that's, especially since the game was so late, that was refreshing to hear. I know that's different. Like, I can't imagine going to an 8 o'clock local time kick and still be able to be, I guess if you look at it one way, you've got all day to let's see, how should I say this in, like maybe like a PG, maybe even G way. The liquid was flowing. The liquid was flowing all day, and, you think you have a 5 o'clock kick, a 6 o'clock kick, you have plenty of time during the day, but that's 2 extra hours. That's 2 extra hours to consume whatever kind of beverage, adult beverage, that, you want to get you prepared for that game, to get you rowdy. So, well, that's it. Alabama, are they facing some more losses? I don't have the SEC standings pulled up here, but if we're looking at that, basically, Ole Miss and LSU are in the same boat. Texas A&M and Alabama are basically, I would say, tied for first. Let's just say that. LSU and Ole Miss would be tied for second, but Ole Miss would have the lead over LSU. They would break the tiebreaker because of the head-to-head. But Texas A&M and Alabama, what a perfect timing for this. Alabama is going to College Station. It's the 2:30 p.m. CBS kick. Look, that right there is that's gonna determine who's at the top of the West. Can Texas A&M do it? I don't know. But if Ole Miss wants to have a chance, if they want to win the West, obviously they've got to. They can't lose anymore. They can't lose any more SEC West games. They can't lose any more conference games. I mean, they can't. They can't. They got to win out. But Alabama has to lose twice. And Alabama has Texas A&M, and they've got Tennessee and LSU up ahead. And you can never count out Auburn, especially in that Iron Bowl. We've seen what Auburn can do and what they've done in the past to shock Alabama and shock the world, for that matter. That's Alabama, Mississippi State. And that's your SEC versus SEC recap for this week, Week 5 in college football. Now, I wanted to pull this up real quick, and I failed to put the defensive players here, but let's just take a look at the offensive. Since this was an offensive showing this week, there was some offense going on. Quite frankly, not just in the SEC. There was games outside the SEC that were pretty offensive heavy performances. But right here, if we take a look at this, the SEC offensive players of the week, obviously you have Jackson Dart for Ole Miss, the junior. As we read here, these bullet points, he accounted for 439 yards of total offense and five touchdowns in Ole Miss's thrilling victory over LSU. Down 9 points late in the fourth quarter, Dart rushed for a touchdown with 5 minutes and 6 seconds remaining and tossed the game-winning score with 39 seconds left. He completed 26 of 39 passes for a season-high 389 yards and a career-high 4 touchdowns. Added 50 yards rushing and 1 score on 7 carries. And look at this. He's moved up to 11th all-time at Ole Miss in career total offense, 5,342 yards. A great performance from that kid, Jackson Dart. I have the discussion almost every week. You have Spencer Sanders, a kid that Ole Miss, the Grove Collective, the NIL partnered with Ole Miss, is paying Spencer Sanders a lot of money to sit on the bench behind Jackson Dart. Now, I do not fault Lane Kiffin for getting a insurance policy, as it's referred to as. But obviously Dart he's struggled. He's still not there yet. He still has a lot of growing to do. He still has a lot of improving to do. But Spencer Sanders, I think you got to get him involved. And I know, it's kind of funny. You may think, well, you're an idiot because you're reading the offensive player of the week, Jackson Dart, and you're sitting here talking about his backup. Yeah, I am. Dart had an incredible game. But I think you should do what other teams are doing. Certain other teams are using other quarterbacks. So give Spencer Sanders two packages. Give him just a couple packages. Give him a couple formations. And not necessarily one of these, he come into the game, they're obviously going to run this play or this play. No, you give him a variety of things to do. You let Jackson Dart breathe a little bit, and maybe in certain points of the game. You keep him fresh. But Dart, and this is something that Matt Corral really didn't have. Like when Matt Corral went down, look, the talent, and I'm not going to disparage anybody. I'm not going to look down on anybody, but the thing about an old Alabama team, and even now, I don't know about a quarterback with Ty Simpson, but in years past, Alabama, if somebody went down, there was a great player right there ready to go in. Depth is what they call it. Ole Miss is getting depth. That's getting depth. You have a great quarterback that you're paying a lot of money to sit there on the bench. And if Jackson Dart ends up going down, he knows he can hand it over to somebody, and it's the team's going to be in great hands. But right now, Jackson Dart he's getting better and better, and I'm very excited to see what he can do, what his season is going to end up looking like as we go on further, as we reach the halfway point. But your co-SEC Offensive Player of the Week, Ray Davis of Kentucky, a senior. He totaled 289 yards from scrimmage and a school record tying 4 touchdowns in Kentucky's 33-14 win over number 22 and 23 ranked Florida. 22/23 ranked Florida. Interesting. He rushed 26 times for 280 yards, third highest in school history, and 3 touchdowns. 280 yards and 3 touchdowns are career highs for Davis, and his 75-yard touchdown dash is a career long. He also caught 1 pass for a 9-yard touchdown, making 2 defenders miss before dragging another into the end zone. He scored all 4 of Kentucky's touchdowns during the game. And check this out. Florida entered this game 14th in the nation in run defense, having only allowed 82 rushing yards per game. That is what you call putting a team on your back and saying, hey, it doesn't matter what these rankings mean, doesn't matter what these statistics mean, I am going to run down your throat, and I'm going to change all that. Just rewrite that. Rewrite Florida being 14th in the nation in run defense. That don't matter. Ray Davis, when he's preparing for this game last week, he's like, They'll know this week. They'll know Saturday when I get that ball. But that's your co-offensive SEC players of the week. Now, let's talk a little bit more about some other games here. We'll look through some other games right here on the college football scoreboard. Michigan, number 2 Michigan, huge win over Nebraska, 45-7. That really wasn't even worth that few seconds that we just wasted. Nebraska's, not good. Not good. Washington wins over Arizona 31-24. And right here, USC and Colorado. 48-41, USC, number 8 USC gets the victory over Colorado. Coach Prime loses 2 weeks in a row. USC came out, they scored 14 in the first quarter. Colorado scored 14 in the second, but USC scored 20. It was 34-14 going into halftime, and USC added 14 in the third. They took the foot off the gas, though. Because I remember earlier in the day seeing the updates from this game and thinking, wow, USC is destroying them. And then you see a little bit later that, hey, Colorado's working their way back. You know? Was 7 points away from tying the ball game. They just couldn't get it done. They didn't quit. I commend them for that. No quit in that team. But Caleb Williams in USC is, Caleb Williams had 403 yards and 6 touchdowns in that ball game. Just a great performance by your reigning Heisman winner. Moving on down, Duke nearly getting a victory over Notre Dame, but failing right there at the end of the game. Notre Dame came back right there at the end and scored the game-winning touchdown. The 17th-ranked Duke and the 11th-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish, 21-14. Notre Dame gets the victory. It starts out with a 10-0 lead at halftime for Notre Dame. Duke comes back and basically they get ahead of them there. They get ahead of them by one. That's what it was. It was 14-13 in the fourth quarter. Notre Dame comes back, and hey, Sam Hartman. Look, he's a great kid. He didn't have a bad game. Let's look at the box score of this real quick, and we'll dive into this a little bit. Riley Leonard. Bless him, he did get hurt at the end of the game, and Sam Hartman, I know you all probably saw the show of sportsmanship from Sam Hartman as Riley Leonard was in the tent getting looked at on the sidelines after the game was over. Sam Hartman waiting for him to come out of the tent just to shake his hand and say, good game, and whatever else he said, probably something along the lines of hope you get better, and wish the best for you, I'm sure it was something along the lines of that. But Sam Hartman in this game, 15-30, 222 yards to Riley Leonard's 12-27, 134 yards. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. This is close, probably closer than it should have been. Duke is not bad. I'm telling you, folks, the ACC isn't bad. ACC has several teams that are in contention to. You look at how many of them's ranked. You have Florida State way up there at the top. Obviously Duke, not a bad team. North Carolina. I'm missing some, obviously. Clemson just completely out of the conversation. Looking. Is there any more? I would say, yeah, we'll probably just call it right there at that. Not really much else to say. Now, Oregon State beat Utah 21-7. Utah kicks them on back a little bit after getting a big victory at the beginning of the year. They obviously beat Florida, Baylor, UCLA, and they just got beat by Oregon State. And that's that. Let's circle back around to this Ole Miss and LSU game before we leave you and before we close it down here and get prepared for later in the week when we we preview Week 6. So we talked about the offense. We looked at the stats. Well, let's look at team stats here because we talked about individual stats. Team stats for Ole Miss and LSU. Again, the Rebels win 55-49. 389 passing yards for Ole Miss. 414 passing yards, LSU. Ole Miss had 317 rushing yards. LSU had 223 rushing yards. That is 700, and that's 7. That is a 7, folks. 706 total yards of offense for Ole Miss. LSU had 637. LSU allowed 3 sacks. Ole Miss did not allow 1 sack. A great performance by the O-line. Really, both lines, honestly, for Ole Miss. And there was many times where, see, this is the thing. This is the deal about a quarterback like Jaden Daniels. If you get pressure on him, you're just going to force him out of the pocket or force him to run in that gap right straight in the middle of the field. And 9 times out of 10, it never fails. There's always a opening out in the flat, especially when you're causing them to run around. The receivers get further downfield, and it just opens up the flat or opens up right at the middle of the field, and they have a chance to make a play. That's why it's so hard to, just like a Jalen Milroe, but Jaden Daniels, I think, is even better than him, especially at evading defenders and turning chicken salad out of you-know-what, basically. And takes a lot of risks, honestly. And Jackson Dart does the same thing. They take too many risks out there. They're going to get hurt. I'm just so afraid when I see a quarterback running. Now, I know that there's a lot of penalties out there that protect these quarterbacks. Maybe it's kind of a little bit too soft, a lot of these penalties are, but that doesn't mean that you might not still get hurt. Like, you're still getting hit out there. If you don't slide, even if you slide, I mean, somebody may come in late and hit you. That's just part of the game. It's a high-speed sport. If you've ever played football, you know that, like, you're moving at a high rate of speed. It's hard. You can't just stop on a dime. And even if you haven't played football, like, you can just imagine, like, hey, if you're going in a certain motion, you can't just stop yourself, especially when your goal is to tackle, to take the person out of the play. It's hard just to stop yourself. But Jaden Daniels, he found a way until he got popped. He got popped and lost the football, and that right there was a game-altering play, honestly, early in the ball game, because that would have been an LSU touchdown. And Ole Miss had a takeaway, and they scored. And they went up 14-0. Excuse me. That early in the game. Just a great performance there. I mean, that, you say a lot about the defense, and you'll hear people say, including myself, I said it earlier, the non-existent defense, things that you've heard get thrown around about this game. Look, for Ole Miss, there was some defense in this game, obviously, but Ole Miss's defense stopped them. They obviously got that takeaway, and they stopped them in the fourth quarter when it counted. And at the end of the day, that's what did it. The offense was firing on all cylinders, but the defense is the one that really, they did their final. They had one final mission at the end of the game, and that's prevent a touchdown. And they did so. Prevent a touchdown, they get a touchdown and kick the extra point, they win the game. But I'm telling you, just that game was electric. Environment was electric, and they broke an attendance record, a little over 66,700 people in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium there in Oxford, Mississippi. Hot crowd, fans stormed the field. If you've watched the video, and I know all of you have, I'd play it, but I don't want a copyright strike. I'm still figuring out how to get around those things, but you seen the, probably frat boy, I don't know. I mean, my assumption is, look, I don't want to group all college kids into, like they're all frat kids, okay? Like, you can usually tell the ones apart, usually by how they're dressed, but I digress. He climbs up on the crossbar of one of the goalposts, right? The crossbar, the bar that goes crossways that the uprights are attached to at each end. So he crawls on there, and He's kind of getting real sensual with it. He then proceeds to climb up, like not like a fireman's pole, but instead of sliding down, he's crawling up. And he's crawling up, and he's crawling up. He's climbing up this upright. I don't know. I mean, obviously, in Oxford, especially on game day, liquid's flowing. Like I said, for that state game, for this Ole Miss game, that liquid was flowing all day in the Grove. And then Ole Miss wins, and that just accelerates. Like, it takes whatever level these people were at, dials it up many, many notches. So then he slides down the upright, and he's standing on the crossbar. Proceeds to Jeff Hardy swanton bomb, does a front flip off the crossbar onto nothing. He lands right there on the ground, hit the ground hard. Like, I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know what this kid was thinking. And I joked earlier with some people that he woke up Sunday morning screaming in pain, probably because when he was all sobered up, that's when he felt that. Because it's so funny. He fell, he hit the ground, he stood up, and there was two policemen or guards or whatever there, and they walked him out. And I think they knew, ow, this kid, we're just gonna ease him out of here because he's probably pretty hurt. Oh man, don't you just love college football? Field storming, I love field storming. Hey, a lot of people are against it. I'm for it. I'm 100% for field storming. It's just Greg Sankey is trying to get rid of it. The SEC is really strict. They fined Ole Miss $100,000. Of course, I don't think Ole Miss minds that at all. If they could pay that in pennies, they would. But I think that's a great part of the game. Storming the field after getting a big victory. And it's people saying, hey, why are you going to storm the field after beating number 13 ranked team? Hey, look, that's Lane Kiffin's signature win. It was a big moment, exciting moment. It was you broke a record in the stadium. Hey, storm the field. Go crazy. Go nuts. Enjoy it. So I feel good for Lane Kiffin. I feel good. He got his signature win, and really he should have. They're paying him $9 million a year. He's got to start getting victories like that. But on the flip side, Brian Kelly, he was obviously, he's pretty heated. He was not. You could tell he's in distress. And obviously, I keep saying this after last year. I'm telling you, he started off too hot. They won the West, and they won all those games and beat all these teams. And at that point, how much further can you go? Especially at a program like LSU where it's a year-to-year thing. Literally, Ed Ogeron won the national championship, and less than 2 years later, he was gone. LSU fired Les Miles after losing 2 or 3 games in a row that last year that he was there. Fired him in the middle of the year. LSU, that's why it's so, I don't know why some of these coaches really want to go to a team like that. Because the standards are so high. And I'm telling you, Brian Kelly, if he doesn't get it together, he'll be on that hot seat. Just like that, folks. As crazy as that is to say. Because he's in that same boat as Lane Kiffin. He's getting paid $9-10 million a year. He's getting paid more than Kiffin. And they should expect success. They should expect competing, winning the West, or getting darn near close to winning it every single year. Hey. That's just how it goes. Brian Kelly, he was at Notre Dame for all those years, and, he could have probably coached there many more, I'm sure. We'll see. Maybe their defense. Everybody's talking about LSU's defense is so terrible. LSU's defense is terrible. Oh, it's all about LSU's defense. They were supposed to have a great defense. I think everybody was excited about how good LSU's secondary was. Was it the secondary? People didn't expect their defense to be that bad. But I don't know if it's more so of like LSU's defense is bad as it is Ole Miss's defense when it's firing on all cylinders. It's just that great. That high-powered offense. Both of these offenses, high-powered. That's what made this game so great. See, I remember I read comments on Facebook Saturday night after this game and Sunday from people that they're not supporting of either team. They're just casual people, just looking to maybe they love college football and want to watch a game that's not the team that they follow. And they said it was a great game, entertaining game, and that's what you like to see. To think like, okay, if you're a fan of these teams, like this was you didn't have any fingernails at the end of it. But, if you're a casual fan out there, like this was a great game regardless if you're a fan or not. But if you're out there and you're neutral, you're a casual fan, you're just a lover of college football, you love this game, and this is what it's all about, folks. That's Ole Miss and LSU. Later in the week, we'll talk about what their futures hold. Ole Miss, like I said, has got a chance. They have to continue to win, and they have to keep improving. And certain other things have to happen. Alabama's got to lose a couple of times. Texas A&M, they've got to lose. But you need a couple off, whether that starts this week with Texas A&M or it's later on. I don't know. But it's got to happen. A lot of things have got to happen. But look, we go through this every year. But hey, it's the wild, wild west. It's literally the wild, wild west. In the SEC West. That's funny right there. Well, that right there, folks, was your SEC recap, your Week 5 recap right here, Right Along Sports. My name's Brandon Taylor, as always. Stay tuned. Later in the week, like I said, we'll look at Week 6 and another great week of matchups. Well, I'm telling you, we're so blessed to be... just to be able to enjoy this. We got the Red River rivalry happening among a lot of great SEC games. It's going to be loaded, and we're going to be here for it. We're going to be here for you, and that's just what we do here at Right Along Sports. So for Zach Ainsworth, the dad, wherever he is right now, probably struggling to get sleep. My name's Brandon Taylor, as always. Hope you have a great week, everybody. Peace. We'll see you next time. God bless.